Look! Gold!
This is gold, Mr. Bond.
The gold calls to us.
Gold!
I love gold!
What is it about big, sparkling piles of treasure that makes us do this?
We need
Cash.
like that.
Is it the possibilities, the power, the prospect of never having to work for your awful boss ever again? Or is it just that
Gold has a way of bringing out the larceny in all of us, Mrs. Lowe.
whatever it is, Hollywood knows about it, and they've spent the last century perfecting the art of the treasure room. A well-known trope at this point, it seems to be a source of never-ending inspiration, and the perfect narrative cap-off to a long, dramatic, and perilous adventure. Who doesn't look forward to the long-awaited reveal?
Would you look at that?
The moment we finally get to see what's causing that glow on the characters' faces, what's changed their pupils to money signs, the most dazzling prize they could ever imagine. And often, the big score that's going to solve all their problems. I know I do. So I've collected all the treasure rooms, from theatrically released films only, that I think are the most impressive. Now off we go, on a treasure hunt through cinematic history, in search of the greatest treasure room ever put to film. X marks the spot, but oh dear, this may not be a treasure room at all. Or is it? I suppose we have to ask ourselves, what is and is not a treasure room? A museum can be a treasure room, or a private collection, or even just a vault full of cash. For this list, I want to focus on big juicy piles of gold and jewels. That said, I think it's only right to explore the potential of vaults as treasure rooms in their own right, as there have been some impressive ones throughout the years. My main issue with considering vaults as treasure rooms is that, well, cash is boring. Look at it sitting there, all flat and orderly. Also, it's a bit underwhelming.
That's 80,000? Looks like a lot less than I thought.
It always does.
Now, I love a good heist movie as much as the next treasure hunter, but once you've seen one cold, sterile bank vault, you've seen them all. You've basically got to go full Joker and set a mountain of bills on fire in order for it to be interesting. Or suck it out through a giant tube like they did in Logan Lucky and Now You See Me. Still, some of them are just iconic. My favorite vault is probably the one from the Bellagio in Ocean's 11.
Once we get down the shaft, though, then it's a piece of cake. Just 2 more guards with Uzis and the most elaborate vault door ever conceived by man.
Though I'll admit, it's not much to look at. In Steven Soderbergh's 2001 remake of the classic heist film from 1960, the crew is tasked with infiltrating a highly secure casino vault in order to rob the villainous owner.
95-pound Chinese man with $160 million behind this door.
Let's get him out.
Yeah.
Of course, the prize in the original film seems quaint compared to that of its descendant. This escalation of expectations is something we'll see a lot in this list, as audiences begin to desire bigger and bigger payoffs and visual spectacles. And when it comes to visual appeal, at least the Fort Knox scene in Goldfinger gives us a bit more sparkle. The gold may be stacked neatly and locked away, but it's there, and James Bond even uses a couple ingots to help him bonk open the case housing a bomb, just in time to save the day. And for a take on this concept that dials it up a bit, Die Hard with a Vengeance gave us a look inside the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, with numerous pallets stacked high with gold bars. The Lestrange Vault in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 is an interesting take on the concept. It's full of old and valuable items, and then there's the security system. The contents of this Gringotts vault multiply if touched by, shall we say, unauthorized personnel, leading to a rather panic-inducing episode in Harry's search for Voldemort's Horcruxes, and an increasingly large stack of treasure. Finally, I have to mention the most treasure room-like vault of them all, the Addams Family Vault. With riches like this just piling up, it's only natural that someone would want to steal it. And though the journey to the vault is fun and adventurous, it is technically still a vault, so I'm leaving it behind on this island and continuing the search.
Showtime!
Now I can start giving out official COSMAWARDS. At this next location, we've found our 11th place and winner of the Spinell Trophy, the long-hidden treasure of One-Eyed Willie. The Goonies has got to be one of the most fun films out there, perfectly capturing that 80s kids on bikes atmosphere that is so beloved and oft copied. That exhilarating feeling of going on some epic adventure at the age of 14, hoping it's dangerous enough to make you the coolest kid in school, if you survive. Of course, the kids in the Goonies aren't just doing this for bragging rights, but to save their home. When they realize the treasure of One-Eyed Willie could be sitting untouched, just waiting for someone to claim it, they can't resist. And what a treasure it is! How many of us dreamed of filling our pockets like they did? Still, this is nothing compared to the coming stops on our voyage. But before we move on, a bit of treasure trivia. The Inferno, the ship seen in the film, was an homage to another movie vessel, the Seahawk from the 1940 film starring Errol Flynn. And it was a real ship, constructed by hand for the Goonies, but dismantled when no one wanted to buy it. Back on the hunt, our next X on the map brings us to the second pirate horde on this list. Securing the Tourmaline Trophy of 10th place is Isla de Muerta, the unfindable fortune of the Pirates of the Caribbean. If you're shocked to find it so low on this list, you're not alone. I was expecting it to be top 5, easily. This covetous cove holds the loot of countless greedy scallywags, including the cursed gold of Cortez, which left Barbossa's crew of mutineers unable to die. Now, why is it so low? Well, that curse is a powerful drawback. And though there are lots of piles scattered around, a lot of it seems pretty superficial, just a thin layer of treasure atop a rocky terrain. We'll need to do better than that for the higher rankings. But first, more treasure trivia. The set for Isla de Muerta was built on the Disney lot in Burbank, California, and took 100 craftsmen and set designers around 5 months to complete. All the terrain was crafted by hand, and the set was then filled with 300,000 gallons of water to create the perfect look.
The cave set is one of the largest sets built on a stage in Hollywood. And it's a centerpiece in the movie because that's where the cursed treasure is essentially hidden.
We were trying at that point to take a little bit of the Disney feel in the cave and the ride at Disneyland. So we came up with the concept that the Aztec gold is hidden in this volcanic cave in the mountains.
So back on the seas we go, now reaching our 9th place destination. The underworld treasure of Scoob takes home the Garnet Trophy this time, with its massive glittering hills of gold coins and statuary. This treasure room was quite a sight to behold, even if antagonist Dick Dastardly was more interested in a different sort of treasure in the end. In fact, no one seemed particularly interested in this treasure, since the gang just left it all there without even trying to loot anything. I suppose it makes sense though, as the Scooby-Doo franchise is so full of treasure rooms, these characters are probably just desensitized to it at this point. They might be billionaires? Treasure trivia time! This treasure room contained more than just huge piles of coins. It was also the home of Cerberus, the giant three-headed dog from Greek mythology. But in a deleted scene, Cerberus was backed up by an army of night hounds that could only be defeated using sonic attacks. Quite the well-guarded treasure. We return to the search with the next X leading to the Trinity Church in Lower Manhattan, NYC. The 8th place position and accompanying Amber Trophy belonged to the Templar treasure of 2004's National Treasure. Who can forget this legendary reveal when treasure hunter Ben Gates lowers his torch and brings light to the glorious cavern of historical artifacts from antiquity and beyond? Oh, and plenty of good old-fashioned shiny things too. As Jack Sparrow said,
"No old treasure is silver and gold, mate."
And here we see perhaps the most precious kind of treasure of all, lost knowledge. It may not be as dazzling as some of the other sparkly piles we've seen, but it is important to humanity as a whole, and that's gotta be worth something. Treasure trivia. The treasure room was a miniature model that was shot at 1/6 scale, but the fire troughs used to light it were shot at full scale, so a good deal of layering and compositing around hundreds of elements was needed to make it look right in the final edit. Kind of shows how brilliant these set makers are, and how much work goes into making movie magic.
These shots were particularly challenging just because of the number of elements involved. Somewhere between 100 and 200 elements that build up. So here's the original blue screen shot. We take the various versions of the miniature footage, we place fire and smoke in there. We end up manipulating some of the treasure, adding more treasure here and there, and also we can build camera moves into that to help match the camera move of the foreground element where the people are on the blue screen.
Pressing onward, our search leads us to 7th place. Snagging the Citrine Trophy is the entire treasury of the English Empire as seen in The Pirates, Band of Misfits. Queen Victoria has been depicted in so many lights over the decades since she reigned, but in this case, it's a somewhat villainous one, as she tries to use the very wealth of the Commonwealth as a bribe. And what could she possibly want so badly that she'd trade all of this? The last remaining dodo bird, that's what. But alas, Polly is not for sale, so she'll have to console herself with her staggering seas of gold instead. Treasure trivia. Like most stop-motion films, this one was made using lots of tiny sets, many of which occupied the same room despite being disconnected in the film. It would take all day to create even 1 to 4 seconds of footage, with every tiny frame being arranged by hand by teams of skilled and very patient artists.
The director has one scene to think about, the one he's shooting right now, whereas for me, I have to think about 35, 40 simultaneously.
You know, you've got a pirate boat next to something going on in the middle of London, next to Blood Island. It's not like any other film set you will ever visit.
One of the sequences is about 20 frames long. It took us about 2 weeks to set up.
It still surprises me, really, the sweat and blood that went into every frame, and when it's all done, it just flies by on the screen.
Now, speaking of seas of gold, our compass is pointing south, past the English Channel and the Mediterranean, where we'll find the winner of the Topaz Trophy of 6th place. Hamunaptra, the city of the dead, the final resting place for Egypt's greatest kings, and all of their collective wealth, according to legend. In The Mummy, our heroes accidentally reawaken the spirit of Imhotep, a cursed priest of the dark arts who was given the most brutal death of anyone ever to ensure that he would never return. It didn't work, sadly, and the world almost ended. Not the best plan. But luckily, all turned out well in the end, with the crew returning to one of the most iconic treasure rooms of all time for the big final fight. Rugged superhuman Rick O'Connell even got to keep some of the loot. It's hard to tell how large the collection is, but this is about more than sheer quantity. Sometimes, nostalgia bias makes the difference. And for our treasure trivia at this location, while most of The Mummy was filmed in Morocco, due to safety concerns in Egypt at the time, and the treasure room set was built in the UK, the outdoor scenes at Hamunaptra were actually filmed on a set that was constructed inside a real volcano. The Gara Medouar is a dormant volcano, but still, pretty cool. Our voyage takes us to the glittering emerald shores of Oz next, as Oz the Great and Powerful takes the Peridot Trophy and 5th place overall. Hey, if Ocean's 11 didn't get to be 11th place, then Oz doesn't get to have an emerald trophy. It's only fair. This treasure room is so magnificent, it's the literal poster child for the trope on tvtropes.com. So while our so-called protagonist, Oscar, may be a total charlatan, the treasure room itself is a genuine stunner. Who could stop themselves from diving in when the golden pool looks so inviting?
Secondhand suits for you, baby!
All he has to do in order to claim his fortune is defeat a witch. We'll leave him to it, shall we? Treasure trivia. This scene relied heavily on CGI, and once we get a sense of the real depth of the room itself, it's fair to say this treasure room holds an unfathomable amount of treasure. Here's what the CG artists had to say about the project.
We kept the best of both worlds, giving actors something to interact with while performing, and giving a real piece of the set for the director of photography to light, but leaving flexibility in post to achieve the design vision. Construction of the digital treasure room interior started from concept artwork by Robert Stromberg's team, both with digital concept illustrations as well as architectural blueprints. Visual effects artists resolved these two sources and also made additional design choices based on examining the 3D volume and also seeing how the lighting affected the look. The room was then filled with over 2 million CG coins. Coins were piled and in some cases angled towards camera so that they gave just the right amount of reflection and sparkle.
Now, we've seen a lot of pirates on this list, but I can think of another kind of character that hungers even more for the shiny stuff. Dragons. The next X on the map takes us deep into the Hobbit's halls of Erebor, where the great worm Smaug is languishing in his twinkling dwarven paradise. He'll be happy to know that 4th place comes with a shiny aquamarine trophy, but I don't want to be the one to tell him. The titular hobbit, Bilbo, is tasked with retrieving the Arkenstone, a one-of-a-kind gem also known as the Heart of the Mountain. But unfortunately for him, Smaug is famously unfriendly and very attached to that golden bed of his, and who could blame him? The dwarves of Erebor worked hard to make this one of the most impressive treasure rooms in history. But was it enough to outpace all the pirates on our list? Time will tell. A bit of treasure trivia on this scene. Treasure sequences in the halls of Erebor were reportedly the most difficult scenes to film in the entire Hobbit trilogy. It makes sense when you consider the sheer scale of the task, with countless elements needing to be juggled. The filmmakers can explain it way better than me, so I'll hand it over to them.
Peter Jackson envisioned a huge cavernous tomb-like space for Erebor. In total, the environment spans over 1.5 million square metres. For both the treasure hall and the forges, we used a combination of live-action photography and CG to realise this enormous environment. Combining the many hundreds of kilograms of on-set coins and treasure, along with the CG, was an interesting problem for the compositing team, especially in stereo. It took assiduous planning to marry the depth of the plate photography with the irregular shape of the terrain. Lighting and rendering that many coins and treasure assets was another hurdle. The lighting team developed some tools to generate tile sets based on the basic layout of the ground. These tiles could then be deformed to make the treasure more irregular, change its orientation, randomness, size, and placement.
As we arrive at our third place location, Sapphire trophy in hand, the still, stuffy air takes on a decidedly wondrous flavor. One could say we were almost in a cave of wonders. An icon among icons, we all knew this one would be high up on the list. And what makes it even greater is that we don't really know the true dimensions of this sprawling cavern. Is it just the first room and then the open space with the lamp? I personally doubt it. I like to think these ridiculously opulent surroundings stretch on for a mile at least. And if they do, this spot easily takes the cake for largest traditional treasure room. These scenes are brimming with almost as much trivia treasure as the Cave of Wonders itself. For the 1992 film, it was one of the first instances where we see Disney's animators playing with 3D animation. A studio known for its hand-drawn masterpieces, they were both eager to embrace new technology, but anxious about how it might impact the look and feel of their work. Looking back, the sequence stands out and looks less smooth than the CGI we've become accustomed to, but it is still quite impressive for its time, and memorable. Understandably, the 2019 live-action remake of Aladdin showcased a Cave of Wonders that was much more realistic in appearance than in the animated film, making excellent use of the natural beauty of Jordan's Wadi Rum desert, as well as the decades of technological progress when it comes to CGI. The Cave of Wonders also presents a moral dilemma, acting as a test of goodness and only allowing entry to a person with the right potential, the diamond in the rough. This moral symbolism is often communicated through colors in this film, with blue representing good and red representing evil. The genie is good, and he's blue. Jafar is bad, and he wears red. Jasmine wears a blue outfit for most of the film, but when she's enslaved by Jafar, he makes her wear red. And in the Cave of Wonders, the chamber housing the genie's lamp is bathed in calming blue light, while the wicked source of temptation is a tantalizing giant ruby. Blue and red are both primary colors, and so is yellow. Perhaps the golden glow of the treasure represents a sort of neutral state for Aladdin while he ponders the choice between honest heroism and petty thievery. As our journey comes to a close, we're left with some rather unique treasure rooms. In fact, one could argue that these are not rooms at all, since they are in fact whole cities. Which I suppose contain rooms, so it counts. Our number 2 ranking and the amethyst trophy that goes with it belongs to El Dorado and Cibola. Yes indeed, it's a tie for the 2 cities of gold, with El Dorado coming in with a bit of an edge. We do get to see considerably more of this one after all, along with plenty of evidence of this beautiful land's truly limitless wealth. They're just tossing gold into a pit, for goodness sake. As for Cibola, the fact that they could construct actual buildings out of gold tells me all I need to know. And while we never get to see this city at the height of its power, a little imagination goes a long way once the seed is planted. Treasure trivia. The animation team that worked on the Road to El Dorado did extensive hands-on research of ancient Mayan structures in order to design the look of the city. Studying physical ruins and learning real history helped them bring this fictional culture to life, creating an impressive kingdom made that much more breathtaking once overlaid with gold.
Conceptualizing the fantastic visual style of the Mayan-inspired world of El Dorado began when the film's creative team traveled to the lush jungles and towering ancient temples of Central America.
We took a fantastic whirlwind trip to Mexico, saw a number of sites. It was an incredibly valuable trip. You know, the artists had some time to sketch, which of course helped our production design team make some decisions about, you know, what the city of El Dorado would look like.
The blue, the red, yellow, that's original color.
It is a beautiful, beautiful culture that was extremely colorful. And we recreated what must have existed then.
What we wanted to do in this movie, though, was to sort of take inspiration from that and just blow it out bigger than life, because truly, this is meant to be Shangri-La.
The Cibola set in National Treasure 2 was built and painted by hand, largely out of styrofoam molded to resemble the geology of South Dakota, by insanely skilled craftsmen, and took about 8 weeks. Complete with waterworks, they used the largest soundstage they could find, and filled nearly all of it from floor to ceiling.
Yeah, I often look at this and I think, holy cow, that's pretty cool.
It's huge. I mean, no stage in Hollywood could encompass all of it. So we've got the main set here on stage 12. We've got another stage with another part of the cave. And then the entrance to the cave is actually up at the top of the hill at Universal in an outdoor tank. If you put it all together, it's probably one of the biggest sets ever built.
Now what, you may ask, could possibly be greater than whole cities made out of gold? And to that I say, how about an entire planet? That's right, the greatest treasure room in all of cinematic history, and winner of the Cosmic Opal Trophy of first place, is none other than Treasure Planet. It's a planet, covered in treasure, the loot of 1,000 worlds. Disney really said, everyone go home. Even Smaug is looking at this with a dropped jaw. And in the end, it looks like the pirates have it.
I couldn't touch it.
It's too bad the treasure itself is now gone thanks to typical selfish pirate booby-trapping shenanigans. Treasure Planet's massive scale speaks for itself, but there's some fun treasure trivia that adds to that immensity. Thanks to its groundbreaking blending of traditional and digital animation techniques, this was a wildly expensive film to produce. $140 million to be precise. In fact, it is still considered the most expensive traditionally animated film to date, especially since older animation practices are an exceedingly rare use these days.
Today, Kent Melton is sculpting what will become the very first maquette in the history of Disney animation that incorporates computer-generated elements.
There's a lot of firsts on this film, and my job is no exception. Basically, the elements that are computer-generated on the character in the film are likewise computer-generated on the maquettes.
While Kent Melton sculpts his first pass at the maquette, CG animator Eric Daniels works closely with Glenn Keane on the computer models for Silver's arm, leg, and headpiece.
We have a three-dimensional representation of the arm that we've created, which you see right here. This is sort of like a little sculpture, but it's like a virtual sculpture inside the computer.
Once the dimensions of the computer elements are worked out, Eric Daniels provides computer files to a company that specializes in a technology called stereolithography. Laser beams are shot into a liquid which hardens layer by layer into a three-dimensional plastic replica of the computer design.
It's also worth noting that Treasure Planet is part of a long, and I mean very long, Hollywood tradition of adapting Robert Louis Stevenson's classic pirate adventure Treasure Island to the silver screen. In fact, in early drafts of this list, Treasure Island had its own ranking. You can see why, and also why I had to make some tough calls, but it would feel wrong to give the top spot to a Treasure Island adaptation without at least mentioning what came before it. So there you have it, the best treasure rooms in cinema history, or at least the best so far. I'm sure this trope is far from played out, so expect to see new, evolving takes on the concept for many years to come. And hey, if you think of any rooms I missed, feel free to shout them out in the comments. I love collecting these, so I'm happy to learn more. Looking over this list, I've noticed a few trends in the depiction of treasure rooms. First, it seems that as we move along the timeline chronologically, treasure rooms start to get bigger and more elaborate. Look at that big haul from Train Robbers, for instance. After all they went through, this tiny vault and even tinier chest of gold is all they have to show for it. In context, this is quite the prize, but it doesn't hit the same way as even the lowest ranking treasure piles in this list. Secondly, I've noticed that media directed primarily toward children tends to have the most over-the-top treasure rooms. Now, this is not a universal truth, as we see in the case of The Hobbit or The Mummy, for instance. But treasure hoards meant to entice adults tend to have a more realistic and palpable tinge to them, hence the abundance of bank vaults and cash piles in place of gold coins. Perhaps the fantasy of towering treasure mountains is less appealing as we grow up and accept that they don't really exist, our dreams slowly shifting to match the reality around us. The magic never really fades, though, and that's why treasure rooms will always be one of the best cinematic tropes out there. Thanks for sticking around, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. See you at the next COSMAWARDS.